everyone. Our topic for today are is hepatobiliary tract. Specifically, we're gonna start with liver disorder. Uh, Remember that during our first day, I told you that you needed to study your anatomy and physiology. So I won't be covering much of the anatomy and physiology. And as we go on with the disorder discussion, dun lang tayo, no? So, but of course, we all know that the liver is located in the right upper quadrant, and we all know the important functions of your liver. Like what I always say, you don't have to flip to the next slide. If all of the students knew the functions of your liver, you don't have to discuss the pathophysiology. But it is good to know that to remember that the hepatocytes are the specialized epithelial cells. Uh, this liver is made up of globules, and those are the functional units. And the blood supply, what I love about the liver is it receives two blood sources, the oxygen-rich blood, of course, and the nutrient-rich blood. And uh, let's go directly to because of the time constraints problem, I will go directly to the functions of your liver. Okay, now, first function of your liver is the production of the bile. As we all know, bile is used for emulsification of fats. Uh, but sorry, I've been always correcting patients and even nurses, I'm surprised, that they will say once the patient has uh, gallbladder surgery, the usual comments that I hear is, ah, mahirapan na siyang mag-digest ng fats kasi wala na siyang bile. No, that is so incorrect because bile is being produced in the liver, but the gallbladder stores and concentrates the bile. No? So it concentrates and stores the bile. So it is so wrong to say that if patient has this surgery, the patient can no longer emulsify the gut. Now, uh, one thing that we would notice with the patient with chronic liver disease is having changes in the color of the stool or changes in the color of the urine or even changes of the skin, specifically your jaundice. How did this happen? So let's be reminded of the anatomy and physiology. Remember that the hepatocytes remove bilirubin from the blood and conjugates it to glucuronic acid and secreted to the bile ducts. Uh, the bilirubin is that parang dark color derived from the breakdown of hemoglobin by the phagocytes. Uh, in the small intestine, the bile converts to urobilinogen and part goes to the feces, giving that dark brown or uh, light brown to dark yellow color of the stool. And the part goes back to the mucosa into the portal circulation. And part of the urobilinogen goes to the systemic circulation and gets excreted to the kidneys. We would do notice in patients with chronic liver disease, it's there's problem with the breakdown by the phagocytes. The color of the stool of the patient becomes acholic. Acholic means clay colored stool. And instead the urine being the amber in color, it becomes the tea colored or cola colored urine. And obviously, since it goes to your systemic circulation, that could also affect skin of the patient and the eyes of the patient. So you could see jaundice and you could see yellowish skin of the patient. So another function of the liver also is the glucose metabolism. Remember, like what we discussed in your endo disorder, that glucose, excess glucose, could be stored as glycogen in your hepatocyte. So if you will become hypoglycemic, you will not immediately collapse, knowing that you have your stored glucose to be used in the future. Now, once the glucose goes down, of course, the glycogen will be converted back to glucose. And of course, it will be used for energy. So that maintains the glucose level in your blood. Now, if you're going to ask me, one of the most important function of your liver, in fact, the death of the patient usually stems from this, but number one cause is usually upper GI bleeding because of the ruptured esophageal varices. But the most problematic complication of a chronic liver disease patient is all about the deamination function or the ammonia conversion. Remember that if you eat food, especially if it's rich in protein, the byproduct of those protein are your ammonia. And remember that ammonia should be converted into urea to be excreted in your urine. So imagine if the liver is diseased, how could the ammonia be back, be converted into urea? So if that's the case, how how could ammonia be released from the patient's body? But that is one important function. So without flipping to the next slide and talking about pathophysiology, the fact that the ammonia stays in the patient's body and it cannot be excreted because it cannot be converted into urea, this ammonia has a possibility to cross the blood-brain barrier, causing what we call the hepatic ulcer, as we discuss this later. So, do you agree with me that this function is very important? Of course, it is very important. And one thing that, uh, another thing that exaggerates this problem is this ammonia produced by bacteria in the intestines multiplies. So multiplies. So again, the fact that this cannot be removed from the body, and there's your bacteria in the intestine that causing more of ammonia will result to accumulation of ammonia, causing hepatic encephalopathy. Now, protein metabolism is also one function of your liver. Now, one function is your protein metabolism. Right? The liver synthesizes almost all of the plasma protein. And we all know that the amino acid are the building blocks for protein synthesis. Another concern will be it will be needing vitamin K in synthesis of prothrombin and subclotting factor. So it is needless to say, if the patient has chronic liver disease, especially this vitamin K synthesis that is needed in the prothrombin and some clotting factors, you will be seeing patients having easy bruisability. You should be seeing patients having uh, at risk for severe bleeding, knowing that this liver has something to do with the protein metabolism. So it's not just about having that amino acid problem, but more importantly, the patient has a bleeding tendency problem. Now, another function of your liver is the fat metabolism. Okay, as you remember our discussion last time in your endocrine system, the endocrine system. Remember that when there's less of glucose, our body is designed to compensate, and they will be finding some other sources of glucose. Remember that discussion. So the body is stopping the fats and protein, and it will be converted to an energy source. But not to say prolonged use of fats as fuel for energy would result to accumulation of ketone bodies, especially if the patient has diabetes mellitus. Okay, so that's one function of the liver. Now later, we'll be discussing about the problem having too much of the ketone bodies, the ketone bodies. But as we remember last time in our end of discussion, that these ketone bodies could result to diabetic ketoacidosis, causing changes in the neurological status of the patient. Now, the liver also has the vitamin and iron storage function. We all know that. And your most uh, your most favorite function of your liver is, of course, drug metabolism. Every time I ask you, what is the function of your liver? And everybody raises their hand and they all say the same answer, that's your drug metabolism. So, uh, everything that the patient takes in passes to your passes to your passes to your liver. So, so it is not surprising that if a patient is a walking pharmacy, or uh, like what your discussion in your geriatric before, but there are many patients who are polypharmacy, uh, to the point that the patient are taking more than 5 or 10 tablets per day. Okay. So it is so possible that the liver will also be damaged because of this function. Remember this. Sabi ko nga sa inyo, as you discuss the anatomy and physiology, you will be able to appreciate, of course, the possible complications of liver disease. Okay? Now, how do we assess patient with liver problems? Of course, we're talking about number one is we always ask, do you have a history of alcohol or drug abuse, especially the alcohol? Alcohol is very toxic to your liver. Number one cause of liver cirrhosis, that's your Leydig cirrhosis, is because of alcohol. So that's because of alcohol. And uh, when we do talk of viral hepatitis, especially hepatitis A, we always ask the travel history. Oh, hindi na nga travel history. Did you eat somewhere in the HEPA lane of Manila? Okay. Remember before Isko Moreno became a mayor, there were so many ambulant vendors. That is one source of hepatitis. So, hindi lang basta history, but of course, on the places that you go to and you enjoy those exotic and street food delicacy. And exposure of patient to hepatotoxic or infection. Um, that's a given. Now, occupation that would include uh, what are the possible occupation that would be resulting to this problem? Okay. Before, okay, wherein there's no drive-through. Majority of the drivers, especially those taxi drivers, will gonna eat everywhere, just anywhere. Okay, so very small eatery wherein the sanitary standards are not kept. Okay, I think we will not be surprised if you will be having some hepatitis problem, or uh, or those occupations that would really be exposing you to alcohol consumption. Pwede rin po yun, no? And of course, the lifestyle and background. Sabi ko nga, what I so amazed with the Filipinos are, if we're sad, if we're broken-hearted, we drink. If we're happy, we drink. If you pass in the exam, you drink. If you fail, you drink. But worst thing is the baby christening. My God, you're offering your baby to the Lord. And yet, there's still lots of alcohol. If there's a wake because somebody died, still there's alcohol. If you're so tired after the whole day of working, you're gonna drink alcohol. And they would say, pampatulog lang. So, we literally find reasons to drink, you know. If you're watching movies, American movies especially, if they see you drinking in the afternoon, they would say, they would be checked on, and they will be thinking you have a problem. As a Philippines, morning, noon, afternoon, nakataas pa yung shirt, no? People are drinking. So, ano pa yung background? So, and of course, the past medical history. There are cases wherein there's no liver problem before, but there are other pre-existing medical conditions that contribute to the development of this problem. So, patients with cardiac problem will also be having liver problems. Liver problems. Now, uh, I want to go to the hepatic dysfunction then and the complication. Uh, Remember that when we do talk of hepatic dysfunction, you always look at the possibility that the patient has jaundice. But do all patients with liver dysfunction will be having jaundice? Not all patients will be having jaundice. In fact, if patient will have jaundice, sometimes it's on the last stage, no? Or I would say later stage, the last stage. I would like to correct later stage. When we do talk of liver problems, usually the earliest sign are those loss of appetite, no? And these complications, this the portal hypertension and ascites are all present on the later stage. Tayo. Now, I will not be talking so much about hepatitis since from what I know, you had this discussion in your communicable disease. But hepatitis, uh, when we started, when I was still in college, we only have three hepatitis, and that is A, B, C, and of course, we all know that it's not up to E, no? Meron pa. So, I'm not surprised if hepatitis will be evolving and later on, baka umabot pa tayo sa Z, hepatitis A hanggang sa Z, no? And hepatitis A is hepatitis is usually chronic, no? This is chronic. This is chronic. This is a viral problem. Now, the fact that it is titis, that means inflammation is happening to your liver. And it is caused by it's either infection, like what I mentioned, the hepatitis, viral hepatitis, and of course your drugs, and obviously your alcohol. It may be acute and it may be chronic. Now, uh, regardless whether it's an hepatitis A, B, C, D, and E, okay, the usual presentation of the patient is, especially on the hepatitis A, is these three stages. Okay, so but this is more focused on hepatitis A. Remember your discussion in communicable disease. You have your pre-ecteric stage, wherein, like what I mentioned, the earliest and the major manifestation of the patient is loss of appetite. And the patient becomes weak, okay, body malaise, right? And of course, you have your right upper quadrant pain because that's where your liver is, and the liver is inflamed. The patient has hepatomegaly. And ecteric stage, as the term implies, ecteric, the patient already has, of course, jaundice, whether it's the skin or whether it's the eyes. And post-ecteric stage, the patient still has fatigue, fatigue, but obviously the patient is improving. Now, when we do talk of hepatitis A, I would always say this is the cheapest among hepatitis. This is the cheapest among hepatitis. And Why? Because you will be able to contract this if you ate of contaminated food or water, or the patient undergo practices oral anal sex. No? Sabi, this may sound gross, but if you still remember your discussion in communicable disease, oral anal sex also will contribute this problem. And of course, sorry class, I won't be talking so much about this since this was discussed in your communicable disease. Hepatitis B, you could be contracting this virus through blood and uh, bodily fluids, of course, that would include your semen. And it has a tendency to go cirrhotic, okay? It has a tendency to go cancerous, okay? And since this is viral, of course, we're not giving antibiotics here. But what's good about hepatitis B, this can be prevented by receiving your immunization. I just hope that I just hope that everybody receive your immunization. I just hope that everybody is already completed with your hepatitis B uh, vaccination. Okay? Because especially as those who are frontliners who are dealing with patients are always at risk to have this because of the needle pricks. The needle pricks. And of course, you have your hepatitis C. Hepatitis C could be transferred from mother to baby and could transfer to multiple blood transfusion. And hepatitis C is more common in those drug addicts. No? Kaya yung merong blood transfusion po tayo. Hepatitis D will not occur unless there's hepatitis B. And hepatitis E, almost the same with the hepatitis A. This is also food and waterborne. Okay? So, what's good about hepatitis A and E, it has no chronicity. In fact, the most is 2 months and the patient is totally recovered. Now, there's also this drug-induced hepatitis, wherein, uh, like what I mentioned earlier, the patient is a walking pharmacy or polypharmacy that even simple headaches, pag-take agad ng medication. Nagkaroon ng cramps, medication. And you thought that paracetamol is very innocent knowing that it is highly hepatotoxic. This medication, of course, could cause damage to your hepatitis. And we also have this fulminant hepatic failure, wherein we have this patient before, a 20-year-old female, no history of drinking, but the patient died within a week, no? Agad-agad, no? Massive liver death following acute hepatitis. And in that scenario, the patient's relatives are really surprised because the patient died immediately. Ito pangit itong pulmonary hepatic failure. No? And of course, when we do talk of viral hepatitis, this is caused by virus. We cannot give medication, IV antibiotics. But of course, we have to rest the body. We have to literally rest the liver. So eating less fatty foods, no alcoholic beverages, and of course, good nutrition, good OFI or oral fluid intake. Uh-huh. But remember, like what I mentioned earlier, that liver has something to do with the vitamin K, right? That is needed for clotting factors and prothrombin. So it is noteworthy is to mention that patient it has a tendency to bleed. So in short, the raised or the toothbrush should be softer based on the fact that this patient has this bleeding tendency. Okay? And since there's a problem with the synthesis of vitamin K, vitamin injection could be given to your patient to prevent possible bleeding. Now, let's go to liver cirrhosis, the very bit of the liver disorder. So I want you to give me your 100% attention. Remember that liver cirrhosis is caused by extensive scarring. this is not an acute thing. So never that you will be hearing a patient has this or developed this overnight or after 1 week, the patient has liver cirrhosis. No, this is the result of chronic abuse to your liver, chronic abuse to your liver. Now, this liver cirrhosis, remember, the liver as at first would regenerate. For example, there's an infection or injury. Our body is designed to compensate, right? I always say that and I sound like a broken record. At first it regenerates. But if it's a vicious, continuous, chronic cycle, okay, this will result to degeneration or destruction of the hepatocyte. So later on, it becomes nodular, it becomes fibrotic. Remember that the liver is receiving blood supply from those sources. If this becomes fibrotic, obviously it will be altering the perfusion of the liver because the blood that is supposed to go in the liver will no longer be allowed to go in because of the injury, because of the scarring. So later on, because of this problem, the liver also will what? Shrink in size. Shrink in size. So I want you to look at the picture so you can literally see the nodules and the fibrosis. And this is supposed to, wala tayong picture na makinis, no? So this is supposed to be smooth, right? That the development of the fibrosis of the nodules could cause again problem with the blood circulation going to your liver. Now, there are several types of liver cirrhosis. The most common is your alcoholic or leydic cirrhosis. So this is a no-brainer. The fact that the alcohol is toxic to your liver, and if the patient has history of being alcoholic for so many years, and as you notice, people who are alcoholic are also malnourished. They could live without eating, no, but they cannot live without drinking. And you also have your post-necrotic. As you, as you, as I discussed earlier, those with unresolved hepatitis B and C, especially those with B, could cause with could is high risk to develop liver cirrhosis, so acute viral hepatitis. Because of the infection, the liver will also be what is scarred. And you also have your biliary cirrhosis. So, for example, um, yun naman yung magdodraw ang teacher nyo. Okay. Okay. So, for example, this is your common bile duct. And then the pancreas. Then you have your gallbladder and of course the liver. So imagine if the patient has gallstone here. Remember, the gallbladder stores and concentrate the bile. And siya rin yung magre-release ng bile, magre-release po ng bile. So, if the if the patient has biliary problem, especially yung ang ating patient na merong gallbladder problem, the bile that is supposed to be outflowing will be black. The bile that should be used for emulsification of bile is black. So where will it go? So there's no way to go but to return back, to go back flow to regurgitate. So if that would happen, of course, that would also be causing cirrhosis. Remember, this is bile, and bile is so like potent. Baka emulsify nga ng fat eh. Okay. So cannot be used. So where will it go? It will backflow and it will backflow, causing this problem, of course, causing this problem. And uh, ko lang yung aking annotation. And you have your cardiac cirrhosis wherein wala naman siyang liver problem. If you still remember your cardio discussion, di ba? the fluid goes back to the system, magkaroon ng jugular vein distension, and also magkakaroon ng ascites ng patient mo, and of course, affecting your liver. Kaka-splenomegaly pa nga eh. So common sense will tell you, if you're gonna be correcting the heart problem, it will also follow the the liver problem will also be corrected. Okay. Now, the cirrhosis could be earned on the earlier stage and of course on the later stage. If it's an earlier stage, it is a compensated liver cirrhosis, compensated. As the term implies, it's still doing its job. So patients do not know that's already fibrotic, but you could see that there's some changes in the patient having weight loss and of course the weakness. The patient is always fatigued. But later on, as the fibrosis becomes extensive, you would see that this is already decompensated and the liver cannot do its function anymore. So these possible complications will happen to your patient. So again, this, like what I mentioned earlier, this doesn't happen overnight. This doesn't happen overnight. So this is supposed to be your normal liver na ano siya, na smooth, hindi siya inflamed. Then the abuse will result to this. Nakita niyo naman yung size class, oh. And of course the appearance will clearly tell you that this is a disease, a cirrhotic liver. At kitang-kita, you don't have to use uh, you don't have to do microscope. You could literally see the nodules and the fibrosis happening, the fibrotic bands that is happening to your patient. Now, uh, let's go to the complication of the liver problem. Okay, class. I want you to give me your 100% attention. Okay. So if you're doing anything, please stop. I want you to listen to me. Okay, portal hypertension problem is one of the main problem having liver cirrhosis. And portal hypertension could result to ascites. Portal hypertension could result to bleeding esophageal or gastric varices. Portal hypertension could also have the hemorrhoids problem. Then this is a separate problem, of course, the hepatic encephalopathy. Now, this is a picture of a patient having a liver cirrhosis. So we're gonna be dissecting the possible signs and symptoms of all of these complications. Now, uh, I sound like a broken record and I kept on repeating myself. Patient will be having jaundice. I will be having jaundice. And you could you could see that the patient has also has yellowish sclera. It could be caused by hemolytic. The term implies hemolysis, right? Increased destruction of the RBC. And of course, hepatocellular, inability to damage liver cell to clear the bilirubin from the blood, or it could also be obstructive jaundice. Remember, in the biliary problem, wherein there's stones or lithiasis, the outflow of the bile will not happen. And like what I mentioned, it will be only backflowing or regurgitating. And portal hypertension class is not about having high blood or having high blood pressure. Like what I mentioned, there are two blood supplies. One that is giving you oxygen, rich blood, and of course the other one is giving you a nutrient-rich blood. Now, this is a no-brainer. If the liver becomes diseased and fibrotic, of course, the blood that is supposed to go through the liver will not be able to flow. Question: where will the blood that is supposed to be going in your liver go? Oh, just like your traffic. So if this is traffic, so imagine nyo na lang class, if there's a vehicular accident that happened in front of St. Luke's, and you wanna go to Cubao, your vehicle cannot possibly pass through. What will you do? You will look for alternate route. You will go to NCH and take the other side of the road. So that's the same thing with the liver. Since the blood cannot flow through the liver, of course, it will be looking for collateral circulation or alternate circulation, resulting to varices, either it's esophageal varices, or it may be, of course, uh, gastric varices, upper part of the gastric area. Now, another complication is ascites. Ascites. Ascites is the accumulation of the fluid in your abdominal area. Ascites could be blamed into three possible reasons. Number one of which, of course, is caused by the portal hypertension. This portal hypertension problem, like what I mentioned earlier, since the blood that is supposed to flow through the liver is impaired, and it will go back and look for other collateral circulation, this will result to increase in the vascular fluid volume, right? And another reason will be there's a failure to metabolize aldosterone. And if you still remember our discussion in your endo, aldosterone has something to do with the water absorption, thereby decreasing the retention of water in the kidney. So may fluid ka na dito in the vascular fluid, then you have your problem in the kidney, and of course, there's also a problem in the albumin. If you still remember, the albumin is responsible for oncotic pressure. It's supposed to pull, attract the fluid. Since, remember, one of the function of your liver is to produce an albumin, and if there's decrease in albumin, there's also decrease in oncotic pressure. So may fluid ka na dyan, may fluid ka pa dyan, meron ka pang fluid shifting because the albumin is decreased, the albumin. So this all fluid will result to extravasation of fluid to your peritoneal area. So if you still remember in your health assessment subject, ascites is being checked or assessed by the doctor and the nurses through what testing. Sige nga po. Can you type in your answer in the chat box? Can you type in your answer? How would you know if the patient has ascites? Obviously, the patient has enlarged abdomen and the patient has kaput pedicea. As you can see, meron nakikita mga veins. Okay. What is that test that you would do to check? Can you please type in the chat box? Okay. I'm waiting po. I'm waiting. Of course. Okay. Okay. May nagsumagot na po. Okay. Okay. So, how are we going to know if the patient has ascites? Through fluid wave test. The examiner's hand, two examiners yan eh. One hand of the examiners is at the middle, and one examiner will gonna tap the side of the liver, and you could literally see the waving of the abdomen. Why is it waving? Because there's too much of fluid in your peritoneal area. Okay, so obviously naman, the patient has increased abdominal girth. Remember, class, if the patient has increased abdominal girth, wait, you have to measure this in centimeter, never in inches. And we're talking about measure abdominal girth, from umbilicus to umbilicus. Because one time I was asking the student, oh, you measured the abdominal girth. And you know what he did? He put the tape below the epigastric area, down to your symphysis pubis. That is not abdominal girth. That is pubic height. Hello, the patient is not pregnant. Pubic height is being done to pregnant patients. When we do talk of abdominal girth, we're going to be putting the tape from the umbilicus, then the umbilicus, no? And it should be measured in centimeter. And of course, the patient has increased weight. So this is a no-brainer. The patient should be weighed every single day, the same time of the day. So for example, 6 a.m. yesterday, 6 a.m. din ngayon with same type of clothing. Remember, class, that 1 kilogram means 1 liter of fluid. So if the patient gains 1 kilogram today, obviously the patient has additional 1 liter of fluid. Wow, that's too much of a fluid. And remember, the increasing size of the abdomen pushes your diaphragm upward. Remember that, class, the bigger the abdomen, the more respiratory problem the patient will develop. Why? The lungs cannot expand that much because the increasing size of the abdomen is pushing up, causing difficulty in breathing. Kaya nga one nursing diagnosis is ineffective breathing pattern related to decreased lung function, secondary to ascites. And because these are so distended, you literally could see the distended veins, no? And patient will have fluid electrolyte imbalance. It should not be, all of the fluid should not be inside the peritoneal area. Na-displace na kasi wala nga pong albumin. And of course, the patient has a fluid wave. Now, remember, there's so much of the fluid that is so not, should not be there. Now, the first line, I want you to remember this. The first line of the diuretic should be spironolactone. This is a potassium-sparing diuretic. Remember, prolonged use of spironolactone could also result to hyperkalemia. Why not furosemide agad-agad? Unang-una, the BP will literally bog down. And the patient would have uh, diuresis na sobra-sobra. Hindi natin gusto yun. No? There will be another source of fluid and electrolyte imbalance if that will be the case. Now, if the DOB of the patient is not corrected, that's the time wherein furosemide will be given to your patient. But it's always the spironolactone. Now, knowing that, like what we mentioned in your MS1, where the sodium goes, the fluid follows, this water follows. Of course, the patient should have sodium restriction. The higher the sodium, the higher the water will be retained, remember. And the patient should be on a bed rest. Now, the absolute reason that the patient will undergo paracentesis. Paracentesis, class, is the removal of the fluid in your peritoneal area. The absolute reason that the patient will be undergoing paracentesis is because of the DOB, difficulty of breathing. Remember, the increasing size of the abdomen causing DOB of the patient. Why is paracentesis not being done to your patient all the time? Two reasons. The abrupt removal of the water or the fluid from the peritoneal area would cause what? Problem in your circulating blood volume. Babagsak ka, babagsak agad. Pwedeng mag-shocky ang patient mo. Pwedeng bumagsak ang BP ng patient nyo. Okay. Another thing would be very obvious, fluid and electrolyte imbalance. So the absolute reason that the patient will undergo paracentesis is the OB. Now, what's better is the peritovenous shunt, wherein the fluid will not be removed, but the fluid will be returned back to the system. And also you have your tips, your transjugular intrahepatic for the systemic shunt. Parang ganun din po lang yan ang PBS natin. So, anong gagawin mo? Of course, low sodium. What else? Weigh the patient, measure the abdominal girth. Since the patient skin is really stretched. Oh, really stretched. Paper thin na yung skin. protect the patient from possible injury. And this is a no-brainer. When liver problem ka na, you have to really stop. Do not lessen, you have to stop from alcohol intake po natin. Alcohol intake natin. Now, another complication will be, sorry po, I kept on looking at the time. Another complication is your esophageal varices. This is also a result of portal hypertension. Like what I mentioned earlier, the obstruction of this portal hypertension, the blood that is supposed to go inside the liver cannot enter. So what will happen? It will backflow, it will regurgitate to the venous, to the intestinal tract, to the spleen, collateral circulation will happen. So if there's collateral circulation, it will be increasing the pressure in the vessels, especially in your esophagus glass. Number one reason the patient dies because of the chronic liver disease is because of the rupture in your esophageal varices. Do you know that simple cupping, straining when the patient is constipated, when the patient sneezes, this will result to rupture of the esophageal varices. So you could literally see patient having hematemesis, talagang parang isang basin, isang cup, no? Because, and since this is massive bleeding, the patient dies because of the upper GI bleeding secondary to the ruptured esophageal or upper part of your stomach gastric varices. Now, management would be, of course, preventive on the side. So do not strain. If there are any upper respiratory tract problem, correct it because the coughing and the sneezing could cause rupture. And also this management, the sclerotherapy class. Sclerotherapy is injecting a sclerosing agent to promote thrombosis or clotting, no? Uh, clotting. And this is being done like endoscopy, parang ganito. Okay. This is inserted parang sa the same preparation upper endoscopy. And of course, this has sclerosing agent. If this is being injected, it will result to clotting, of course, thereby stopping the bleeding of the patient. We call that sclerotherapy. Then, you also have your esophageal banding. Remember our discussion earlier part of the gastro. When you do put, and also yesterday, okay, not yesterday, the last time, is when you do put rubber band, the main reason why it is being done is the constricting effect of placement of the rubber band will result to less blood supply. So if there will be less perfusion, it will be resulting to necrosis. And eventually, this necrotic esophageal varus will slap off, will what? Will be removed. Why? Because that area becomes necrotic. Eh? So that would take time, no? So like this one. Okay. Now, uh, another, uh, another intervention is your balloon tamponade class. All of the students thought this is a penis. No, this is not a penis class. Now, balloon tamponade class is being done using your SB tube. I want you to write in your notes. SB tube is your Sengstaken Blakemore tube. Okay. My class, I want you to look at the picture and listen to the explanation. Okay. Sengstaken Blakemore tube is like an NGT being inserted to your patient. So, nandun sa ilong. By the way, this is being done for 24 hours only. So, this is just a temporary intervention or bleeding varices. So as you can see, it's like an NGT that is being inserted to your patient's nose. Now listen, this is supposed to be deflated, the gastric balloon, and also you have the esophageal balloon, which is also deflated. Okay. As the tube is being inserted, of course, the gastric balloon will serve as an anchor, and the esophageal balloon will serve as that literally would be putting pressure on those esophageal varices that are bleeding. So, di ba ganun yun? If you're bleeding and you try to put compress or pressure, the bleeding will gonna stop. Since we cannot put our hands inside the patient body, this esophageal balloon will putting pressure, thereby stopping the bleeding of those varices. Okay, bleeding of those varices. Now, the problem with the balloon is there's a possibility that the patient will gonna bleed. The patient will gonna the patient will have not bleeding. The patient will have difficulty of breathing problem. Bakit? I want you to look at the picture. Sometimes the gastric balloon will slip up, causing the esophageal balloon also to slip up. If this will happen, this will result to somehow obstruction of the airway, no? Katabi lang niya yung respire, di ba? So, it will be causing difficulty of breathing. Sometimes, as you can see, patient gasping for breath, that's a sign that the patient has difficulty of breathing caused by the displacement of this balloon. So, if this will happen to your patient, of course, what will you initially do? What will you initially do? Of course, the first thing that you needed to do is to deflate the balloon, thinking that this inflated balloon, if will be deflated, of course, will stop the DOB of the patient, will be relieving the DOB of the patient. So this is the usual question in the board exam. Okay, everybody should be answering, type in your answer the type at the chat box. If the patient has stuck and break more tune, knowing that this is a possible complication of this procedure, a thinking nurse would prepare at the patient's bedside letter A, suction machine, letter B, intubation set, letter C, scissor, letter D, nebulizer. Go! A, suction machine. Huwag niyo i-google ang sagot. B, intubation set. C, scissor. And D, your nebulizer. I want to see your answer now. A, B, C, and D class. A, B, C, and D. A, B, C, and D. A, B, C, and D. Okay, so the first thing that we needed to do, of course, is to deflate the balloon. Okay, class. So, out of the choice, of course, is the nebulizer. I think nebulizer has nothing, has no benefit, no, at all. Now, the first thing that you needed to do is to deflate. You know what you do? There are 3 ports pa, class. If there are 3 ports, you're gonna be needing a big syringe to deflate, especially the esophageal balloon. And that would take time. So, if you wanna deflate it, you just have to, if this is the patient's nose, make sure that you have your forceps with you to catch. You just have to cut it using the scissor, and of course the air will be escaping from the deflated, because of the deflation. Nawala na yung air po eh. So thereby relieving the DOB of the patient. So I just hope that you remember this. So what are we preparing at the bedside? Of course, we're preparing the scissor from at the bedside table. And what is that scissor for? To deflate the balloon. To deflate the balloon. Okay. Another concern will be hepatic encephalopathy. This hepatic encephalopathy class, remember, the reason why the patient has hepatic encephalopathy, remember, like what I discussed, one function of your liver is the deamination function. Since you cannot convert the ammonia into urea to be excreted via your urine, the ammonia stays in your blood, and it goes to your brain, causing the blood-brain barrier, causing this problem, your hepatic encephalopathy. So what is the problem here? Accumulation of ammonia in your brain. And ammonia is toxic. It should not supposed to be there in your brain. If this will happen, you will be seeing what? Changes in the neuro status of your patient. So later on, the patient will become comatose. Then later on, the patient will die. Now, earlier, second stage, the patient will have liver plaque or asterixis. So, for example, you're the examiner and you try to do this in the patient. Normally, the hand should be dropping down, right? Or lagging down. In patient with asterixis, if you try to do this, it will flap on its own without you doing it. So may liver flap. And as you can smell the patient has Peter hepaticus. So what is the problem? Ammonia. So what will be the management? The management, it gears towards the removal of the ammonia on the patient's body. Now, it is being done by lactulose. Lactulose could be given via your enema or via NGT or oral. But remember, the patient is already having level of consciousness problem. Of course, the patient cannot take it orally. So an NGT will be inserted and lactulose will be introduced to your patient. Lactulose, if your patient will gonna poop together with the feces, are your ammonia. Since you also have your ammonia because of the intestinal bacteria, of course, antibiotics could also be given to your patient. The most specific antibiotic that could be given to your patient, madami po sila, but when we do talk of this, it's the rifaximin. Pero marami, no? Maraming antibiotics that could be given. But when we do talk of specific antibiotic, when we do talk of hepatic enzyme, you have your rifaximin. Now, monitoring the glucose of the patient. Again, liver has something to do with the glucose. So, baka naman masyadong bumagsak ang glucose natin. So, you could also give IV glucose. Now, another intervention will be watch out for dehydration. Of course, low protein diet. Why low protein diet? Remember, protein will result into ammonia. So ammonia will result to hepatic enzyme. Now, check the LOC of the patient because the patient becomes it will have alteration in the LOC of the and the LOC and the LOC. So ano pang pwedeng gawin po dito? No? Protect the patient. Keep signals up. Ano pa pong pwedeng gawin po natin dito? What are the possible things that we would do? Plus hepatic enzyme. Of course, we have to reorient our patient. Now, if the patient has this problem, of course, we needed to make sure that the patient will have bowel movement 3 to 4 times because along with the feces are also your ammonia. So how do we know that the management is okay? The answer is if there will be changes in the LOC of the patient. If the LOC of the patient has already improved. Okay. Any questions? If there's none, I'll go to your gallbladder and pancreas discussion. Any question po? Any question? Any question? None. If there's none, let's go to the gallbladder problem. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the bile is stored and concentrated in the gallbladder. Okay. So, it is located in the right upper quadrant, posterior surface in the liver, and it could hold up to 50 mils of bile. And it is connected to the common bile duct to the cystic duct, right? The cystic duct. Now, remember that I kept on mentioning the bile is for the emulsification of fats. So if having no bile, we'll have problem with the emulsification of fats. Remember, your partially digested chyme will gonna go to your duodenum, and once it reaches your duodenum, it will gonna be signaling, diba, the gallbladder to release your bile. Okay, your bile. Now, I sound like a broken record. This bile will be used for emulsification of fats, and this will be reabsorbed in the portal circulation. Now, who are the people at risk for gallbladder problem? Number one, female patient, female patient, female patient. And of course, fat, those who are fat. And 40 and above and fertile. Fertile is like those people who had kids before. Okay. Although this could happen to male patient, but again, these are the factors, risk factors that are more predisposed if the patient are having this pag female ka pa. Okay, now class, wait lang po. Okay. One concern of a patient uh, with gallbladder problem is of course the cholelithiasis. Okay, cholelithiasis or stones in the gallbladder are could be blamed to several reasons. It could be caused by metabolic factors like obesity, and of course, this all will result to stagnation of the bile in the gallbladder. Sometimes naman it could be blamed to too much of the fatty foods that the patient eat, okay? And this will all result to precipitation of these bile salts, causing polylithiasis. Sometimes, if it's located in the common bile duct, you call that choledocholitis. It is good to note that gallstones are 80% cholesterol, like what I mentioned, because of the fatty food that the patient eat. And some would have calcium, of course, and bilirubin, and some have protein. But most of the uh, percentage, 80%, could be blamed by cholesterol. So it could be blamed by the diet class. Now, when we do talk of gallbladder problem, there's this Murphy sign. So if you have McBurney's in the AP, you have your Murphy sign. So class, ganito yun. So you try to hook the finger dun sa liver border at the bottom of the rib cage. And you ask the patient to inhale. As the patient inhales, the patient stop literally breathing because the breathing could cause pain. Okay. You call that Murphy sign. This is where you hook, di ba, at the liver border. In short, last po doon sa rib, you hook your finger as the patient breathes. The patient will stop because of that pain. Okay. Iba nga, sometimes they're shocked because of the pain. Now, liver problem, gallbladder problem could be manifested as having the Murphy sign. And of course, the pain. The pain is caused by, remember, if there's a stone in the gallbladder, and the bile, as you eat food, the bile is supposed to be released. In trying to remove the bile or to have an outflow of the bile, of course, the gallbladder will contract. And since there's stone lodging, no, the gallbladder is trying to contract more to release the bile, but to no avail. No? So that causes pain because of the contraction. And every time it contracts, the gallstone, the stone, will cause friction, causing more pain. Okay. And this is a no-brainer. Jaundice, I kept on repeating this, and since the patient has jaundice, the skin is pruritic, no, makate, itchy. And like what I mentioned earlier, the bile, the bilirubin, of course, that's supposed to be absorbed by the system, no? Okay. Ang napupunta sa urine, making your urine tea-colored or cola-colored, and making your stool acolic or no color at all. Parang clay-colored stool. And of course, it will also result to deficiency because of the failure of the absorption of your addict. Now, The right upper quadrant pain usually occurs several hours after eating a fatty meal. Remember, wrong spelling po sa eating, sorry. Remember class, the gastric emptying time. When you eat, it will take how many minutes? Diba? It will take 2 to 4 hours. Some would have 1 to 4 hours after a meal. And diba, that's the time that your partially digested chyme will reach to your duodenum that will be reaching bile. So, if the patient says, ang sakit ng abdomen ko, it is so painful while eating or 15 minutes after eating, obviously this is not a gallbladder problem because if you're going to be tracing the gastric emptying tract, it will take 1 to 4 hours for your partially digested chyme to reach your duodenum that will be needing bile. That pain is not related to gallbladder problem. So it is good to remember this. That the pain usually occurs several hours after eating a fatty meal. Now, sometimes there's no stone, but there's only inflammation of your gallbladder. It may be because of the bacterial infection or other problems like complication of the burns because of less of blood supply or sepsis. So, so this is just the reason is multifactorial. Okay, but more commonly, uh, we are focusing on the gallstone kasi most of the gallbladder problem will result to gallstone formation. Now, when we do talk of uh, gallbladder problem, meron tayong tinatawag na Charcot's triad, okay, in cholangitis. Okay, so merong jaundice, patient of fever, especially merong chills, and the right upper quadrant pain. Now, meron ding uh, Raynaud's pentad. All of the above, the jaundice fever right upper quadrant, and also the patient of hypotension and of course mental status changes. Although this is rare, most of the time is the Charcot's triad. Okay. Now, remember that the bile is for the emulsification of fat. So, having bile problem will result to malabsorption problem, which is steatorrhea, the hallmark sign of malabsorption. Okay, so you could see the stool floating in the toilet bowl. And the patient will have pruritus, of course, and dark amber urine, cola-colored urine. Diagnostics will be elevated bilirubin, elevated alkaline phosphatase, elevated WBC, amylase lipase class. Between the two, the amylase and the lipase is more specific. Why? Because lipase only is elevated up to 2 days, yung iba 3 days, but lipase stays elevated up to 5 days. So between the two, of course, lipase is more specific, especially when we do talk about pancreatitis. Okay, all increase po tayo. And of course, cholecystogram, you could see gallstone. Even the ultrasound, they could see gallstone. Ultrasound, abdominal ultrasound. Pero sa now, since this is a stone, sabi ng patient mo, ayoko magpa-surgery. So, UDCA, the ursodeoxycholic acid, or the CDCA, or deoxycholic acid. But mind you, one capsule, small tablet, no capsule, costs 100 pesos, and this will be taken 3 times a day. So, wow, magpa-surgery ka na lang, no? And cholecystectomy, removal of the entire gallbladder. And of course, meron ka rin lap cholecystectomy. Lap cholecystectomy. Now, shockwave lithotripsy is, shockwave will be introduced to disintegrate the stone. I know you're familiar with the shockwave because of your discussion in the renal system. And of course, you also have your ERCP, wherein a tube will be inserted and will be pick up basketing technique, the stones. And you also have your CBDE with T-tube. Ano yung CBDE? Common bile duct exploration with T-tube insertion. The problem with the CBDE, because by the way, CBDE is usually being done if the patient has choledocholitis, the stone lodges in the common bile duct. This will be done, okay, during manipulation. Of course, there will be inflammation causing your inflammation of the bile duct. So how would the bile having an outflow? Naturally, that will not happen. So Ang gagawin nun, a tube will be inserted. This is your T-tube. Okay. T-tube. Ito, lap call ito class. Wait muna tayo. T-tube. T-tube. Ayan. This T-tube is supposed to drain the bile. Remember, during surgery, during manipulation, of course, this will later result to inflammation. Paano magpo-flow yung bile? So, placement of the T-tube, you could see that in the abdomen. This is just temporary. Kasi a tube connected to sometimes a JP drain, Jackson Pot drain. Okay, parang dynamite. Ano na dynamite? Yung grenade, no? Parang it's like a grenade. Now you could see the bile outflow nandun po dun sa JP drain. Sometimes they have this bag, no? So it is needless to say, we have to monitor the output. The usual output of this class is, meron ba dito? Is 500 cc. First 24 hours, yung iba nga, some books says up to 600 cc, no? 600 cc. So, of course, we have to make this patent. So how would you know that the T-tube is effective? You could see that the jaundice of the patient is improving. Nawawala in jaundice ng patient. Nawawala ang jaundice ng patient. Now, pain medication, according to old books, is meperidine because it has less spasm in the sphincter of Oddi. But if you are reading your newest version now, sabi niya, meperidine and demerol is also the same with other pain medication. Kaya ito yung aking dilemma. What are we following? The old books or the now updated book of the Brunner? Baka lang examiner old school at hindi gamitin ang ating old new updated book. Okay? So, but if we're talking about older version, it's the meperidine because it has less spasm. But again, if you try to read your books now, it says wala naman daw difference. Okay. Now, there's this lap cole wherein this was done to me because I have gallstone problem before. Okay. 4 small holes, and of course, you have your umbilicus here wherein you're gonna be putting out the stones, the gallbladder class dyan. Maganda dito sa lap cole, 1 week lang, the patient could go back to the usual activities, less hospital time. And ano pa pong care natin? Ilan po? T-tube natin, T-tube the drain. Second day, usually po, ayan, nagiging 200 na. So we have to monitor this. Okay, now, we have to assess signs for peritonitis. Remember, perforation could possibly happen to your patient. Remember the peritonitis signs and symptoms, the fever, the abdomen is like board-like rigidity, ganun po yun, ha? So, ganun lang yung action natin. Okay? So, na-heavy lifting. So, these are all self-explanatory. So, how do we know that the patient is improving? The skin goes back to the color, yung stool, hindi na siya acolic. The urine is not color-colored already. And the pruritus also will be decreased. Now, last topic, your pancreas problem. Any questions in the gallbladder problem? Any questions? Paki-chat na lang po, any questions? Okay. Now, let's go to pancreas problem, pancreatitis problem. Now, you could always message me if you have any questions. Okay, pancreas problem. Of course, we discussed the endocrine function of the pancreas. Now, we will be talking about the exocrine function of the pancreas. And this exocrine function are all focused on the digestion, di ba? Digestion. And we all remember, and we also be reminded that acinar cells, of course, will be secreting the pancreatic juice that are needed for the digestion of this, the carbohydrates, the protein, and the fats. Okay. Pancreas naman, siguro naman, alam nyo ba, located on the left side. When we do talk of pancreas, the beta cells is responsible for the insulin, and we discussed that in the endocrine part. The alpha cells, the glucagon, and the delta cells, of course, the somatostatin. somatostatin. This pancreatic juice class, pancreatic juice, of course, will be needed for pancreatic amylase for the carbohydrate digestion. And of course, you have your trypsin, chymotrypsin, and elastase for the protein digestion. And lastly, for the fast, the triglyceride, you have your lipase. Lipase. So, plus, wala pa next slide. The fact that it can be used for digesting all of these carbohydrates, protein, and fats, you could see how potent these pancreatic juice are. Okay, so makalusaw nga makadigest nga nito no? So, this could cause pain later on as we discuss this pancreatitis problem later. Now, anatomy and physiology na lang po ito. Please read na lang po. Now, let's talk about pancreatitis. Pancreatitis could be mild and could be severe. Mild, as the term per se, mild nga less abdominal pain. Okay? It starts with epigastric pain, then later on, magkakaroon ng abdominal distension. The patient will have nausea and vomiting and elevated amylase lipase class. Like what I mentioned earlier, lipase is more specific when we do talk of pancreatitis because this remains elevated up to 5 days, while the amylase only is elevated up to 3 days. Now, severe pancreatitis, it will result to refractory hypotensive shock because of the bleeding later as we discuss the signs and respiratory failure. And this patient will gonna die within a day. Now, the most common cause is, number 1, is alcohol abuse. And of course, the gallstone, like what I mentioned earlier. Okay, sige, mag-annotate po tayo. Last, remember this is your common bile duct. Common bile duct. And this is your pancreas. Diba? Kung meron ka stone dito, may gallstone ka dito in the choledocholytitis. If there's a gallstone here in your common bile duct, will the outflow of the pancreatic enzymes be affected? Of course. So, dito, no pancreatic problem, but the patient has gallstone that stop the outflow of the pancreatic enzymes. Of course, that will be resulting to pancreatic problem. Why? Autodigestion happened to your patient. Why? Because the outflow was affected. Because there's presence of gallstone in the common bile duct. Okay? The choledocholytitis. Now, like what we mentioned, titis nga this is inflammatory process that happens to your patient resulting to autodigestion. Remember, those enzymes that would supposed to digest your protein, carbohydrate, and fats. If that will not happen, of course, backflow, mapupunta po sa pancreas, it will be digesting itself. Ang description ng patient is like, this is your palm. It's like pouring an acid. Is that painful? Really painful. Wow. The fact that it could digest all of these three, the carbo, protein, and fats, pag napunta mismo sa pancreas at hindi maka-outflow, literally could digest the pancreas. So, it is common in middle age, especially those who are heavy drinker. Now, we also have this acute pancreatitis, no? Wherein the patient has edematous pancreatitis. Class, listen. What's good about this is self-limiting. There's fluid accumulation and swelling, and usually mild. Pag nag-binge drinking ka lang, gano'n, no? But more severe, of course, is the necrotizing pancreatitis. Necrotize nga no? Necrotize. Okay? It causes cell death and tissue damage. Kaya nga siya necrotizing, becomes necrotic with serious systemic complication. Now, I'm very particular with the sign, so I want you to listen. There's this Callen sign, an indication of intraperitoneal hemorrhage, in which the blood causes periumbilical darkening of the skin like this one. So, Callen's, pag merong sa umbilicus na bleeding and darkening, this is a Callen sign. Now, you also have your Turner sign. Okay. So, yung Turner sign po is on the plank. Yan. Okay. On the plank. Ang tawag ko dito, tagiliran, T, Turner sign. Okay. On the side, tagiliran. Okay. So, this also will pertains to bleeding. Okay. So, hindi lang yung Callen sign ang intraperitoneal bleeding, of course. You also have your gray Turner's or Turner sign that also signifies peritoneal bleeding. Okay, now assessment of course will be left upper quadrant pain that starts with mid-epigastrium, then radiates to the back, to the plank, and severe pain. Plus, the pain is severe, especially in necrotizing. Now, the patient will have nausea and vomiting. Since because of the nausea and vomiting, there's severe dehydration. And mind you guys, it starts to, the abdomen will have distension na. Now, steatorrhea, this is a given because due to the undigested fat, wala pong lipase, di ba, for the fats. So you could see floating stool po talaga on the toilet bowl. Elevated serum amylase and lipase, but again, more specific is the lipase. The patient would have hypocalcemia. Why? Because the patient's calcium binds with the undigested fat. Sabi, ano ba talagang reason why the patient have hypocalcemia? Earlier and on the late stage of the pancreatitis. Remember, when pancreas are damaged, there will be free fatty acids. Fatty acid nga eh. So, if there are free fatty acid, it will generate the action of your lipase. Remember that fats are for the lipase. This will result to insoluble calcium salts. And these calcium salts will become precipitated. Precipitated po tayo. And this deposit in your retroperitoneal area. So, nawawala, nagkakaroon deposition, nagkakaroon po ng deposition of the calcium salts. Of course, it will result to hypocalcemia. And the patient with hyperglycemia, hello, remember that pancreas has also has endocrine function. So although the patient has no diabetes, still the patient is expected to have glucose problem. Now, and like what I mentioned, post-hemorrhagic necrosis, like your Callen sign and your Turner sign, is evident to your patient. CAT scan will reveal enlargement of your pancreas, and even in your ultrasound, makikita mo rin po yan. But more specific, of course, is your CAT scan. Now, remember, main concern here is pain. So pain relief should be given to your patient. No, pain relief should be given to your patient. Now, pain medication, like also your meperidine, could be given to your patient. Okay, but remember, we have to rest the pancreas. So NPO po tayo. And decompression will be done to your patient. If you still remember our discussion in decompression, an NGT will be inserted and connected to a low pressure suction or connected to a bedside bottle. Why? Because if there's continuous presence of the food, of course, that will be needing again pancreatic enzyme na naman. So hindi natin. So they say that positioning the patient on the niches or fetal position would lessen the pain of the patient. O class, important to ha. Important po yun. Now, since the patient becomes hypocalcemic, calcium supplement will be given. Pwedeng IV pa nga preparation dito. Since the patient becomes hyperglycemic, of course, you could give insulin to your patient. Now, antimicrobials to prevent infection. The patient will also be receiving IV PPIs, proton pump inhibitor, H2 blocker, antacid. Then, if the patient will be allowed to eat, the patient will be on a bland diet, low-fat diet, especially the low-fat diet. Now, anticholinergic to decrease pancreatic stimulation. Remember, we want to rest the pancreas. So by giving these anticholinergic agents like atropine and propantylin, this would lessen this stimulation. And since this causes spasm, pain, a smooth muscle relaxant, papaverin, could be given to your patient. And most importantly, elimination of alcohol will be done to the patient. In severe scenario, class, the patient will undergo dialysis. Now, sometimes they do peritoneal lavage. Ano yung peritoneal lavage? A tube will be inserted in the peritoneum, aspirating it, and try to clean it class. So, pero usually ina-aspirate po yan. But in severe scenario, dialysis will be done to your patient. No, dialysis will be done to your patient. Now, and this is self-explanatory class, self-explanatory. Now, those with chronic pancreatitis, of course, the pain in chronic pancreatitis is less painful na, no? Less severe, lesser po yung scale. Okay? So, majority of the patient could tolerate the pain. Now, since the patient has no pancreatic enzyme replacement will be given to your patient, like in the form of pancreatin, pancrease. This is the most common brand. Pancreatin, pancreoplat, those are the usual brand. No? Will the patient take this for the rest of their lives? Yes. Do we have any timing before meals, after meals, after meals? Before meals, wala po. It can be taken anytime. Now, it can be correcting the malabsorption problem kasi nga pancreatic enzyme. Especially po sa fat malabsorption. And pwede rin pong gamitin po ito, again, like what I mentioned, whether the patient has eaten or before meals or after the meals. Okay, so, but most important thing to remember when we do talk of pancreatic problem is the patient should stop taking alcohol. Stop taking alcohol. Okay. Do we have any question, class? Do you have any questions? Any questions? Okay. Do you have any questions? If there's none, I think I'm gonna stop the lecture and the recording.